Okay, I think we are live.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I guess we're live on Facebook now. Ms. Vong, would you please help me in calling roll for the commission?
Yes. Chair Keener,
Present.
Vice Chair Allegado,
Here.
Commissioner Maynard,
Here.
Commissioner Kaufman,
Here.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Here.
We have 5 out of 5 commissioners, so we have quorum.
Great. Was I supposed to call the meeting to order before taking roll or afterwards?
You kind of called the meeting to order, but you didn't say what time it was.
Okay.
But we'll note it
So
as
I've called the meeting to order, then everyone's here. Let's go. Thanks everyone for being here today. The next thing, zipping along the agenda, is the approval of the minutes from August 20th, 2020. So were there any changes?
I believe it is November 16, 2020.
Oh, shoot. What do I have up here? Oh, yep. I have an old agenda up here. Hold on. Let me pull on the pull up the correct one. But I have the correct minutes open. So does anyone have comments on the minutes? Everyone get a chance to look it over? While I'm pulling up the agenda, I'll give you guys one more minute to look it over.
Vicky, because I missed the meeting, I'll abstain from voting on the minutes.
Okay. All right, so if there are no objections, I propose that we pass the minutes as written without any changes.
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And any abstentions?
Me.
Okay, thank you, McKenna. Thanks all. So with that, the minutes from November 16th, 2020, excuse me, for the incorrect date the previous time, are passed. Next, do we have Josh on? Yes, we do. So item 4 on the agenda today is a report on the activities of the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency.
Aloha, Chair Keener and members of the commission. Josh Stambro, Chief Resilience Officer with the City and County of Honolulu, for the record. As you know, the conclusion of Mayor Caldwell's term is coming up at the end of this year. We have been really proud and honored to have been staff for you and the commission. We hope that continues with Mayor-elect Blangiardi's term that will begin on January 2nd. Just so you know what the dates are and the transition timeline. Right now, there's a lot of activity with the different networks of cities. So the Climate Mayors Network, the Resilient Cities Network that Honolulu is a strong part of. All of these groups have been working together collaboratively to try to inform the transition team and the Biden administration coming in about local city needs, county needs, and ways to continue the momentum that we are still in, and all the local advocacy that's happened with over 400 different cities to try to keep the bulk of the population in the Paris Climate Agreement during the past 4 years. And there seems to be a receptivity to that. And so I'm optimistic that there will be federal programs and funding hopefully available to cities like Honolulu that continue to lead on climate change and make sure that there's a strong economic component to the transition to clean energy. Just very quickly, as you know, we've been involved with the CARES funding and the COVID pandemic response. We continue to update the dashboard, the live dashboard online at oneoahu.org around the CARES spending for the city. We are on target to spend those dollars before the end of the year so that none of it returns unspent and all of it gets used for the benefit of local populations here. The wastewater, COVID wastewater testing that we've been doing in conjunction with University of Hawaii is now online and publicly available on the oneoahu.org dashboard site as well. And then we've also been able to do a program with UH and Hawaii Energy to do better buildings. So essentially looking at COVID safe, helping businesses at little to no cost do sort of an audit of the COVID safety of the air quality and as well as energy reduction efficiencies that can be gained and save the businesses money as another program that we've been working on. Finally, about $6.2 million in CARES funds have gone out through the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency embedded program with agriculture. So Dexter Kashida, who's been hired, I think there might be a hot mic. I don't know if everybody can mute. It sounded like something, another conversation going on. So there's been over $6 million to help local farms, local ranches, make sure that there's food, emergency food security supplies through the Hawaii Farmers Bureau and others to really try to beef up the local economic component of food sustainability through our office's efforts in conjunction with the Office of Economic Revitalization, where Dexter and the Vista that works with Dexter are housed right now. In addition, our office has been really involved on the Alawai flood control project and the design forums that they've been holding with the new revised design that the Army engineers have put forward. And so we have been helping with them, especially around water table issues. And I want to thank Commissioner Fletcher and Shelley Habel and others that have helped inform how to build that infrastructure. Should it be built in a way that's durable and resilient in the face of sea level rise and the accompanying ground table water rise that'll have to be incorporated. So we've been busy on that, and I want to thank Matt Gonzer for leading that work. We do have updated 2017 and 2018 carbon emissions inventories now. The energy team's been hard at work on that. Sadly, the news is not good. We haven't been dropping in our emissions, unfortunately. Those readings will come out with the annual sustainability report that we do on an annual basis by the end of the year. And it'll also will also release the draft climate action plan that has been updated with those inventory. I should mention as well, for the first time ever, the city will actually put out its own emissions inventory for city operations as well, and that'll be on our dashboard. And I want to thank the energy program for doing that hard groundwork that really gives us a sense of what the reality is on the ground. There's 3 policies up for hearing tomorrow at the final city council meeting of the year. 3 really important climate initiatives. Bill 58, which we worked really hard on to try to streamline permitting for renewable energy systems that include battery storage, electric vehicle charging, etc. Bill 2, which does update the land use ordinance around parking for the first time in 30 years. And although several elements of that were in the original administration bill have been removed, it's important that there is a sort of a removal of minimum parking pieces that was part of the Oahu Resilience Strategy contained in Bill 2. And then Bill 65, which really works on codifying the role and operations of the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency, as well as making sure that the city leads by example around building benchmarking, energy use, making sure that we have the tools to stay in the Paris Climate Agreement is also up for hearing. So it's a big day tomorrow. And then finally, just wanted to let you know that there has been a lot of work at the city on building the infrastructure for the conversion of the fleet, and specifically the bus fleet. So the charging infrastructure, it has taken some time to get that in, but it is there now. We expect that the first electric bus in our fleet will arrive by the end of the year. And you might have already noticed if you drove on King Street recently that there's a dedicated bus-only lane there that's being put in. I'll add that it is being put in at with financial help from our partners with the Bloomberg Philanthropies that have helped us with our climate advisor and other work. This is something that for 30 years was something that the city had planned on and wanted to do, really congested corridor. And so for public safety, for pedestrian safety, as well as the efficiency of the buses, a bus-only corridor on King Street will be a big add in carbon savings as well. So that's in a nutshell what we've been up to. Mahalo.
Thank you, Director Stanbro. It sounds like it has been a very busy month. Are there questions or follow-ups from the commissioners on Josh's update? Josh, I wanted to hear more about the two of the things that you mentioned, the Alawai flood control revisions. And I guess Chip had been involved in that, so maybe he'll know some of it as well. But just the main issues that were changed from the last go around, and how you guys have been involved in that. And then I'm not sure if you can say any more about the 2017-2018 carbon inventories yet, or if we have to wait till the end of the year just to see what they are. But if you guys have sectoral emission updates that you could give us a sneak preview on. You said that they've gone up, but what were the specific sectors or areas in which we didn't see enough decreases to meet our targets?
So the first element is the Alawai flood control project. You've probably read in the news that the Army Corps of Engineers has essentially come out with a new design that eliminates a lot of the catchment basins up in the Mauka areas, and instead, in order to avoid that, because there was community pushback around those retention basins, instead puts a large pumping station on the Alawai itself, the canal, to try to move water out of there in a flood event faster. Our office has not been, working on the specifics and the technical. We've been really trying to ensure that whatever ultimate design is selected and forwarded, that it incorporates what we know about the increasing impacts of climate change. So whether that's sea level rise, whether that's water table rise, whether that's increased heavy precipitation events, that it is designed to take those into account. I think it's really a sign of success, and the hard work of the office in tandem with the Army Corps of Engineers to bring the expertise on island and the research on island, especially some of Shelley's work and Dr. Fletcher's work to the table. And it looks like they're considering that and trying to make sure that their calculations are based on not only what we can see in terms of the sea level rise coming at us from Mackay, but what we can't see, which is the water table rising under us in that Waikiki, Alawai, Macaulay area, which is so close to sea level. In some cases that water table is, just a foot underneath the ground at this point and coming up sadly fast. So that's that component. The inventories, I don't have them in front of me right now, and they're not sort of in a digestible format in terms of a pie chart or something. But I think they're coming soon. So, and I don't want to mischaracterize it in terms of like, high rates of rise. We just didn't see drops. I think I'm going from memory after seeing the initial numbers, but I think they're essentially flat. Is what we've determined.
Thank you. Are there any other follow-ups or questions from the commissioners? If there are not further follow-up from the commissioners, I will ask if the public has any questions or comments about this agenda item. And you can go ahead and raise your hand using the reactions button, or you can write a question in a chat, or you can take your video off and wave at me. I'm scrolling around looking for people. And I'm not seeing anything.
Great. I'll be around. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Director Stanbro. All right, so let's go on to the next agenda item, which is communications and correspondence from the public. When am I correct that there was no correspondence from the public to the commission this time?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Are there any comments on that agenda item from the commissioners or the public? Same way of making yourself heard. Take your video off. There's something in the chat. All right, I'm not seeing anything. So we're going to go on to the next agenda item, which is going to take up the meat of today's meeting. Item number 6, discussion and action on the climate change and construction industry guidance document. For this agenda item, I've asked Bettina to prepare a short presentation in which she'll kind of go over the charge of the document and the guidance, go over the recommendations, how the paper was developed, and key findings from it. So Bettina, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you very much, Chair Keener. This is quite exciting, not only because I have to share the screen on live video now. We tested it, it worked perfectly, and well, it's not working right now. Oh, okay, bear with me. Why did this work earlier and it's not working now? Let's see. Okay, here it is. Let's try this again. Oh, there. Can everybody see this?
Yep. It's
Okay.
not in
Yes.
presentation mode though. It's in the slide sorter mode right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in
FYI.
slideshow mode.
Okay.
At least it should do this right now. There.
Yep.
Perfect.
Looks good.
Awesome. First of all, thank you to all of you that have come back to listen how our paper has been progressing. I apologize for having this introduction be a little bit of a repeat to those that have been at prior meetings where this was discussed, but we thought it was worthwhile to get everybody a bit grounded and on the same level in regards to, okay, where were we with this? So here it goes, tiny bit of an outline so you know what's coming. Don't let this worry you. It is not as long as this might look like. A couple of numbers to illustrate how incredible our opportunity here is. And our refers to the design and construction industry in regards to having an impact on climate change. Buildings generate nearly 40% of the annual global greenhouse gas emissions. And if you consider that and the fact that the global building stock is expected to double by the year 2060, you'll see where this opportunity is. This additional building stock is about 2.5 trillion square foot. And if you wonder, gosh, how much is this? This is the equivalent to adding an entire New York City every month for 40 years. So like I said, this growth gives our industry a tremendous opportunity to change the adverse impact on the climate. Our climate is getting warmer, the weather is getting more irregular, and the need for cooling and heating during those respective seasons increases. This growing energy use, fueled by many communities by fossil fuel and natural gas, is adding to the amount of carbon emissions into our atmosphere. So with that, it is increasingly important to recognize the role of the built environment in this context. So how we construct buildings and how we use them and where we place them all contributes to climate change. I want to add one note here. Sustainable housing is not a privilege. It's rather our social responsibility to provide equitable housing solutions. And that is particularly relevant here in Hawaii, given that a college-educated couple still falls into the lower income bracket here in Hawaii, but would not in the continental US. So let's look at carbon. There are two types of carbons. One is embodied carbon and one is operational carbon. The embodied carbon in this context is generated during the process of manufacturing, transporting, and installing of construction materials. And then operational carbon, that is what we are most familiar with. That is the emission that consists of a building's energy consumption, such as heating, cooling, lighting. You get the idea. So a bit more graphic presentation of what I just said. Embodied carbon at the beginning of the process, that is during the design, and that's where design industry's opportunity lies. And then the operational carbon, where over the life of a building, emissions are being generated. In many ways, we have incredible opportunity by having a conversation that includes a lot of people. And you see this graphic here that shows some of the stakeholders as I felt they were appropriate. What this will allow us to do is deepen existing relationships and forge new ones. And it requires a bit of imagination and some courage by all of us, because business as usual will simply not work. It will require a dialogue that stretches us and that forces us out of our comfort zones. I believe the fact that we have so many people attending this session here is a very good indication that we are ready to have those types of conversations. And the intent of this paper is to trigger them. The solutions are actually kind of manifold. They are sustainable design strategies. It's good design, quite frankly. There's material selections and how a project is built. There is the energy conversation, and then there is the component of how resilient is our design. Some of the strategies that make sense here in Hawaii, a couple for the lower building typology, a couple of examples for higher ones. We have discussed those in the past. On the material selection, a lot of different materials come into place. An easy one to pick is concrete, and that's for a number of reasons. Hawaii, because of its remote location, has a history of having been, well, kind of a lead in the development of concrete in the early years. We developed technologies way ahead of the mainland. Because concrete doesn't need to be shipped to Hawaii to a degree. Now, green concrete, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, is basically carbon sequestering concrete. So during the manufacturing process, CO2 is injected into the material. There are two, and that results in concrete that has that is actually it's slightly stronger, but has generally the same properties as the concrete that we're all familiar with. There are already two concrete plants in Hawaii that have that technology. And as I've mentioned in the past, this type of concrete is currently being used by the Department of Transportation on some of their work on H1. Resilient design. On the architectural side, we're looking at this in many different ways. I touched on it earlier. This here is a very nice graphic. Credit to Chip Fletcher and his group, but it shows what challenges we have because of our island environment. There are standards that help us to generate more sustainable buildings and building environments. All of you have heard of LEED certification for buildings. You've heard of the Living Building Challenge. You are probably in this audience all familiar with efforts to update codes to hit to address energy efficiency in buildings. The AIA, the American Institute of Architects, have issued a program that's called the 2030 Challenge, which basically outlines, and I'm going to touch on it a little bit in a second, outlines how to get to a net zero carbon building, at least from the operational side, by the year 2030. That is a very aggressive goal, and various states in the U.S. are, you know, have different, how do you say, different success in achieving that. Okay, as we are moving into the recommendation, I thought I point out what the purpose of the commission is. In a nutshell, it is our duty to provide the latest science and information on climate impacts to Hawaii and provide advice and recommendations to the mayor and the city council and his leadership team, the mayor's leadership team. There is, whether we like it or not, we have zero impact on policy. We inform policy, but we don't create policy. I think this is something worth mentioning at this point. So that's the purpose of the commission. The purpose of this paper is to show what the role of the design and construction industry in this context is. And it is to focus on some ideas to implement strategies to increase energy efficiency on our collective path to carbon neutrality. So the recommendations here and I have several slides of those. The recommendations here are stretch goals. They are opening conversations. I also felt that it might make sense to not reinvent the wheel, but to use goals that have been embraced and are pursued in other places. And I'm saying in other places because it is not just the United States, it's outside of the United States. And these two goals are outlined right here, and they're kind of obvious. To globally reduce fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions of the built environment. So to put it in different words, reducing that 40% contribution that our sector has on greenhouse gas emissions. And then secondly, advance the development of sustainable, resilient, carbon neutral buildings and cities. And this portion gets me very excited because we have so much opportunity to rethink where we are and how we do things, that this here that's where our brains come in. And that is quite exciting. So to accomplish this, the global architecture and building community has adopted the following targets now. I took the actual numbers of those targets out because they need to have a conversation. I think what we first need is an agreement that this is what we're going to do. And I don't think there's anybody in this group here that would argue with any of this. So new buildings, developments, and major renovations need to be designed to meet a set fossil fuel, greenhouse gas emitting, energy consumption performance standard for that building type. And us here in Hawaii, we need to have a conversation about what that standard should and can be. And the same holds true for existing buildings. The most, and I'm stating the obvious, the most sustainable, environmentally friendly building is the one that's already built. So what can we do to use the existing building stock and update it? And what is that? What is for us here in Hawaii, what is that target? And then once we have these targets, what is realistic for us to gradually increase them? Another recommendation is this one here. The default for our buildings that use concrete should be carbon sequestering concrete or green concrete for all of our buildings and infrastructure. That is a very bold statement. I'm fully aware of that. What needs to be determined is whether we have the capacity to generate or to produce that amount of green concrete at this point, because, well, we don't have that capacity right now. But the concrete manufacturers will, I am certain, have no objections to fill the demand once it's there. Another recommendation is, and that one is almost easy for us as an architect, or it might sound easy to you because it's actually not that easy, is to hold ourselves to the professional standard of designing for, and that's not formwork. Oh my goodness, I thought I fixed that. It's AIA's framework for design excellence. In there, it is outlined, it's a path that is outlined on how to achieve carbon zero, equitable, resilient, and healthy built environments. The AIA has gotten as far as stating that their awards from now on will only go to projects that set examples in this framework. This one here might generate some discussion. I feel that we need to develop incentives for developers to ensure long-term financial feasibility of developments. For example, we should consider eliminating the building height limitations and define site developments through density and setbacks. The advantages of that is that the developer has the opportunity to develop innovative solutions to combat climate change. For example, a client or a developer that has a development in an area where it's not in a flood zone, but it is close to one, and it occasionally floods like everything. And it's not right at the ocean, but it's also not that far from the ocean. I mean, after all, we are in Hawaii. Had the idea, or well, had the, wanted to, let's put it that way, move his building up. And there were two options to this. One is increase the ground level, or two, not increase the ground level, but increase the height of the first floor. Meaning, as over time, there was more flooding, or as sea level was rising, the building could adapt, and it would, over the long run, with that, ensure its, it would protect the financial investment, if you want to put it that way, by still being perfectly fine in its environment. What that would do, though, is it would move the building up. Now, under the current rules, it would pierce through the building height envelope unless the developer would shave off a building. It is my personal opinion that a developer that wants to do the right thing for the future inhabitants of its project should not be penalized by having to cut off a floor of a building. Not enforcing height limits would allow to decrease building footprints and would increase the amount of daylight between adjacent buildings, as well as the open space on the ground level. It would also allow greater choice of building systems. Just think structural or mechanical, if the required floor-to-floor height is flexible. These are kind of obvious, sorry. That is my last point already. I thought I had another one. Hold on. I did have another one and somehow it fell off. The other point, and I apologize for somehow having managed to lose that slide. I think that we should take a big step back, a collective big step back, and look at where we want to go. And when I say earlier that business as usual does not work, then let's figure out what works. What do we need to become a sustainable development industry and not compromise on the financial feasibility goals. So one of my points was to develop incentives for the developer by rethinking the cost burden of non-building related infrastructure improvements. And to give you an example, if that kind of sounds too nebulous, let's say there is a developer that wants to build a residential, wants to do a residential environment, residential development. And as it goes through its entitlement process and the permitting, it is determined that the sewer capacity is not sufficient. Our default now is that, okay, the developer has to pay for increasing the sewer capacity. And I'd like us to say, wait, what if we are finding ways to separate gray water and black water? What is the capacity that the sewer can handle? And what can we do on our project to save water and reuse it and use gray water for toilets or for landscape irrigation, those types of things. I think it is important for us to have those discussions. I have had, and now I guess it goes to the acknowledgements slide. This is unfortunately, a very incomplete slide because I don't want to put somebody's name on here when I haven't had the chance to ask them for permission to do so. I did not know I had to do this. So the importance here is, I'm going to stop this so I can see all of you. The important next step here is to have conversations that determine what we can reasonably do. And I hope that we agree that reasonably is not equal to easy. I hope reasonably is ultimately allowing us to reach these big stretch goals and become a zero, a zero carbon built environment by a certain date. The AIA picked that date as 2030. In one of my drafts, I had that date as 2030. But we need to figure out whether we are an island state. We need to make sure that, for example, we have the capacity to, let's pick concrete, since that's so easy to pick on. We want to make sure that we're able to generate the amount of concrete that we need for that, for example. I have talked way longer than I thought I would. Maybe at this point I should stop. So is this the, what would you like me to do?
Hi, Bettina. Thank you for that. Thanks for the overview and the going through of the recommendations. At this point, what I'd like to do is open it for conversation with comments from the commission. So we'll start with the commission level and get feedback on the document from the other commissioners before we open it to public testimony. All right. So with that, commissioners.
I'll start. Bettina, thanks for updating us about your white paper that you've been working on with Rafi. From the prior version we saw, I feel like this has, come a long ways. You started like here and now you're here. And so I think, it'd be helpful to talk through how do we see some of these recommendations pushing forward, and then also in the body of the report, just, to flag, maybe I can send over citations and things like that. That might be helpful. Anyway, I think that it's gone a long way. I see in the chat, there's a comment, that it's a little bit, there's some sections missing that maybe, if you need help fleshing them out, I'd be happy to help you with that. So anyways, just to put that out there, but I think it's probably most productive for us to focus on the recommendations. And I see them, as twofold. You really are still trying to tackle the large elements of climate change in the built environment from both the greenhouse gas side and the adaptation side, which is ambitious, right? As we kind of talked about last time. They're both really important though. So I think ambition is good. And maybe I guess I'm still struggling with like the best way to deal with that, given that they are really different approaches, albeit from the same root problems, right? I wanted to comment on your last point, this issue of develop incentives for developers to rethinking the cost burdens. I think this is a really important point. It seems to be a big point in regards to, provision of development services. We always talk about housing as the most important one, right? Given the cost of housing in Hawaii, provision of development services and who bears the cost burdens of that. And so to me, there's this broader question, right? That if you're pushing infrastructure cost burdens into every individual development project, by definition, you're putting that burden into the eventual buyer of those units, right? Which has always long been a problem. But I guess it's because raising this is making me think, well, how do we think about this in the context of climate change, right? This like kind of bigger umbrella issue. What does it mean for climate change, particularly as we're going to be asking the industry to be more creative to meet these challenges? Are there then ways to open those kinds of incentive structures up, which I think is what you're recommending? So anyways, really good food for thought, and thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. I appreciate the feedback. The paper is actually done. There may have been an older version being referenced.
Okay.
So this is the paper is done from my perspective. But you're absolutely right. This is ambitious, but it's all connected, and it's all the same stakeholders that will have to come together to move forward. And I have spoken with a couple of contractors which weren't asked to be included in here, so I did not include them. And I will, once I get a hold of them, and ask, hey, is it okay to name you? But the point being is that this is not considered, the feedback was, well, it's a new material. Are you okay to do this? Yes, of course we are okay to do. Let's examine, let's explore it. Let's examine what it does. And it's not that we are, on the bleeding edge here. This technology has been around for a while, and there are lots of projects on the mainland that use it. So it's actually worldwide, not just on the mainland. So what I found incredibly interesting is that it just needed somebody to bring this up, because then the engineer said, oh yeah, we can do this. And then the contractor said, oh yeah, we can do this. So we reached out to, the concrete manufacturers. And at this particular point, we needed to make sure the capacity was there. But those are the kind of conversations that it takes. And I want to encourage everybody to, with this paper, to do that. David Arakawa has been wonderfully candid in his feedback. And he said, well, in one of your prior meetings, or in your prior commission meetings, you mentioned you would reach out to people, but you haven't. The reason why I stopped reaching out to more people is because I can't do it alone. It will require all of us. It's not fair to hang it on one person. If one person could do it, you know what, I would do it. But I would not. I want to be part of this, but it takes all of us. And it takes broad commitment. And I want nothing more than opening that door and working through this with everyone. And I believe that organizations like ULI and like the AIA and the contractors associations and the developer community, that when we all come together, because in the end, we all want to do the right thing. I don't question this at all. And there's a lot of very smart people in these groups. If we put our minds together, I mean, I want to say we can show the rest of the world how it's done.
Thanks, Bettina. Are there other comments from commissioners? Chip?
Bettina, thank you so much for the hard work that you've put in on this. I recognize that you'd like to move it along. I would like to see additional references. I would like to see more feedback from the development community. And I don't think that we should impose on your time to see that getting done. If you don't, would you consider some other commission members working with Rachel and building up more of the sort of academic side of this with references, taking care of some of the trademark issues with figures, and going to some of your colleagues and asking for feedback and working it up a little bit more. I'd propose that we'll get a extremely strong piece with the fantastic draft that you have at this stage.
Well, I guess it's now open to the world that I am not a paper writer. And I think that having been tasked with summarizing the opportunities, unique opportunities, quite frankly, of the design and construction industry, I think I did this. Thanks to my research assistant, Rafi Lee, who writes absolutely beautiful papers. I have some of those references in there. I am not sure, absolutely. If the commission thinks this needs more work, I'm the last one to stand in the way. I don't think that more information and more data in this document will make a difference. Because if we feel that we want to move this forward, that data is here. And the next step that we need to do is, just like you say, is have those big conversations. And they won't be easy conversations. And I am not entirely sure who can lead them unless it is, I think it is leadership of the, let's say, the Contractors Association and their members. It has to include the people that are in charge of those big developments. And I am not sure. I am not sure that we can do it piece by piece. Fine tuning the paper. I think the next really big step is opening this up to everyone and say, this is what we want to do. And the Climate Change Commission says, all of you people are in an amazing position to make a difference. What role do you want to play? I think that's where we are. Then again, I'm not a paper writer, so I will follow instructions.
Tina, don't put yourself down on this at all. I definitely want to commend the work that you've done and the effort that has gone into this, and the vision and the courage in putting this out there. And these, I think, if we look at the recommendations at that high level, it is all, the basis is there for sure, and I support that 100%. I think maybe what Chip and McKenna are bringing up is that they do see the opportunity for fleshing out more of the details that are so I see the types of products that we've put out in the guidance documents and the recommendations that come out of this paper as maybe being two different types of product. Almost like this set of recommendations is maybe not the guidance document as we've put out in the past. It stands alone as something else that we haven't named yet. I'm just kind of brainstorming here, but I think that, I definitely am taking Chip and McKenna's points when they say that they would, be more comfortable putting additional citations in the body of the paper. And I don't want to put you in a hard place. Again, I think those recommendations are very strong. I'm just wondering what the best way would be to go forward in terms of in terms of a product that we've had enough time to put input to and get feedback on, at the same time as recognizing the importance and validity of the stretch goals. And I wonder if there's something else we could do, like put out a memo of the stretch goals. Sorry. Cat demands attention. To put out something like a memo with the stretch goals that we would then put out additional research to back up with more input. And that is something that we could do with a larger group. Chip, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think there's at least one person in the chat that would like to comment. Maybe we should open it up for public comment, unless someone else on the commission has some comments.
Now, Rosie, did you have anything specific before we went to public comments?
Well, I mean, I guess I just wanted to say that when we were working on the equity paper, I know my feeling was I didn't want to rush it and to take as much time as it needed to be. And I would like to hear feedback from those who are here today to see how we can better incorporate that. And I know that, like, yeah, so I would like to hear from the community what their feedback is.
Yeah, this is definitely a chance for these meetings, the previous meeting in which we discussed the construction guidance document, and this meeting are opportunities for feedback. Oh my God, sorry. For our opportunities for people to make their voices heard. So Bettina, if you have anything right off the bat, or we can go to public comments.
Oh no, I would love to hear what the public comments are. Absolutely. I do want to make, maybe I'm overstating it now. I do want to say that I feel it is important that we're not getting lost in data. There are and that it's just like I think it was McKenna who said this is such a huge topic. It is. We will never, if we're getting into data, we will never finish this paper into more data. I actually thought I did kind of okay with data. I tried to find that line between, oh my God, I'm dying because there's too much data. What's the point? And okay, there's some data. Here's the main point. This is the direction we're going. And there's, it's never perfect. I think we're at a point where what we need to do is kind of clear. How we're wrapping this, how we're painting this picture can change, absolutely. I think the next step, and McKenna and Chris and Chip said that very clearly too, is okay, let's see how we can have these conversations, because one person alone can't have them. And this here is a wonderful kind of a call to action, right? It's a wonderful opportunity. This forum here, it's okay. Let's have a meeting, or let's put a big meeting together and see what comes out of it. Yes, so that's my comment.
Thanks, Bettina. So looking in the chat comments, first we have, I believe, Ryan Kobayashi, and then we'll go to Henry Curtis after that. So Ryan, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you, Chair Keener. Ryan Kobayashi from the Hawaii Laborers Union. Thank you very much for this presentation, the paper, and your hard work on the paper. I also thank you for recognizing, that there's a larger scope of people that need to be included in this. Sometimes when things come up in silos and, there can be big clashes at the end as far as policy development and things like that. But one thing that I would like to add to that, there's more than one union here present on this call. I represent the laborers. I believe the carpenters, the operators union is on here as well. Hawaii Construction Alliance, which is an umbrella group, as well as LESIT, which is a trust fund of the laborers union. You know, you've listed including developers and contractors. But Hawaii, a lot of the larger contractors in Hawaii are unionized contractors. We also, I think, should be included in this scheme as well, because we provide the largest contractors and the most numerous contractors in Hawaii with labor. A lot of our the labor that they use to build these projects. You know, and our internationals, for example, we sit on the board of the ICC as well, the International Codes Council. So we are aware of some of these new technologies. We have training programs on the mainland for certain areas that use these new technologies as well. But we may not use them here because those technologies aren't being implemented. But the reason why we want to be included in these conversations is so that we can be prepared, so we can provide the contractors with trained labor with regard to these technologies as well. You know, but it's no negative criticism on your paper, Ms. Maynard. It's just something that I thought that I'd like to add in as well. But I do you know, we do appreciate, you know, your acknowledgement of the fact that some of these things that you are recommending could impact the end user, which is somebody trying to get into the home at the first time. I believe Ms. Kaufman also acknowledged that as well. You know, some of these changes are kind of global, so we've got to find a way to make them together. And we do agree with that. And we'd just like to be included in the conversation as well. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking up. And I wrote down your name. And if you wouldn't mind putting your contact information either into the chat or reaching out to me, I will make sure that any step forward, you are definitely included. And I apologize. I just looked at my stakeholders bubble diagram, and I am embarrassed to not having had a bubble for the unions on there, because I do talk about it, and I am sorry. And you will have a bubble in the final document. And thank you very much for your feedback.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks, Bettina. So if you're keeping up with the chat, just as a reminder, everyone has, each person who speaks is limited to 3 minutes of testimony, so we can make sure we get through everybody. And Wynn will be keeping track of your 3 minutes, and I assume we'll put it in the chat when your time is up. And I'll jump in and interrupt you if you're still going. But thank you, Ryan, for your comments. Those are well taken. And then next we had Henry Curtis, I believe.
Aloha, commissioners. This is indeed a very complex subject, one that will require a lot of feedback and further discussion. I want to raise 3 issues. First, there was a talk of whether we had enough green concrete. That depends on the rate of growth of the population and of new buildings. And I would be remiss if the commission were to push for an aggressive, sustainable growth rate. That would just raise some thorny issues. Second, the height limit. There's constant pressure to expand the height of buildings. At the same time, there's not a lot of pressure or not a lot of enforcement on restricting the urban boundaries. So if we both expand up and expand out, there's a problem about resilience, which requires food sustainability as well as energy sustainability and open space. The third is Lifeland is part of the docket, the Public Utilities Commission docket on performance-based regulation, dealing with the electric utilities, dealing with incentive regulation. And we certainly favor incentive mechanisms, but there are both incentive and penalty mechanisms. It's not a one-sided coin, it's a two-sided coin. And there is also the issue of freeloaders. Why would you incentivize somebody to do something if they would have done it without the incentive? And is that a wise use of government funds? Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. I know we're making notes of all these. Bettina, do you have any specific feedback on that one? Or
This is terrible because my dogs have a conversation behind me. It sounds bad, but they're fine. I very much appreciate your thoughts, and I love your comment on the importance of defining boundaries. It is something I am very passionate about, and unfortunately, it's not being talked about enough, because one of my one of my favorite sayings of actually last year was, if we want to keep the country, we have to make the city. And what are we willing to do to accomplish that? And the height restriction feeds into a solution to that. You're absolutely right. So thank you very much for bringing that up.
thanks, Bettina. Next, we had Nathaniel's iPhone. Nathaniel, would you please identify yourself for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Nathaniel Kinney. I'm the executive director of the Hawaii Construction Alliance. And so the Hawaii Construction Alliance is made up of the carpenters, operators, laborers, masons, bricklayers, unions all together. So these are all of the 5 unions that have a direct contractual relationship with a general contractor. And so I kind of wanted to piggyback on top of Ryan Kobayashi's comments from the laborers. You know, after going through some of these Bill 25 and Bill 2 at the city council, was becoming apparent to the unions is that we need to get involved more, because we present, even though we represent the men, the workers on the project, we actually have a more holistic view of the industry. And that's why we need to be brought in as stakeholders. So let me give you an example. Like when you go to the Contractors Association, a Contractors Association, by the nature of what it is it's an association of competitors. And you know, when you try to talk to the developers are also a kind of a coalition of what are in essence competitors. So when you talk about how developing this one policy affects a certain amount of projects, you know, developers are like, oh, does it affect my project? Oh, okay, never mind, I don't care. And contractors are always trying to, like, you know, become certified in one type of new building style or new sort of building product, because, and then they want to jealously hold on to that because it's a competitive advantage with other general contractors. Whereas the unions come in, it's like, look, we're just looking at the overall construction industry. And so we kind of become the default, like, kind of like, I guess you could say the default conscious of like, oh, what is best for the entire industry, rather than just what is good for this single developer on this single project, or for this single contractor on this single for this one certification or specification. And so I just wanted to kind of piggyback on it and say, like, if and we're the ones, frankly, we're the ones that are talking to the policymakers far more than the contractors or even the developers are concerned. We're doing the daily grind of watching what's coming through as far as like these new bills, these new ordinances, these new amendments to the LUO, not just on Oahu, but everywhere across the state. So we would appreciate being invited into the conversation. And I think you'd find that, once you get our buy-in, it's much easier to get the others to buy in, because we're at a kind of a critical leverage point. And that's just something I just wanted to add. Thank you.
Sorry, Vicky, I might be stepping in. I am so excited right now. I'm sorry, I used that word before, but it's almost as if we're starting this conversation that we need. It's starting right here. And I know this is over at 4, but let's not stop. Let's go right into the next conversation. I know we all don't really need another Zoom meeting, but this here is just so invigorating to me, because the next generations are dependent on our decisions now, and we gotta do the right thing. And the fact that both you, Nathaniel, and Ryan, you took the time and you came to this meeting and you spoke up means a lot. And I think we have taken more than one step into the right direction here already. And I really want to say thank you.
Thanks, Bettina, and thanks, Nathaniel. I'll just make a note that there is also in the chat from Christopher Delaunay, sorry if I got that pronunciation wrong, with his information, and he also would like to be included in the conversation. And I would like to say that I'm really happy with kind of the tone of the conversation in today's meeting and in the response. Chip, I saw you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I want to echo both Vicky and Bettina's thanks to Nathaniel and Ryan. I'd also like to ask, do you guys have any sort of education program or training program for the unions with regard to sustainability, resiliency, climate change? And I ask because I would think that getting a strong background in the urgency of climate change specifically would be important to set us all on the same playing field and to understand the motivation that is behind what you may view as some of the more disruptive steps that are being taken.
As far as the laborers union goes, we do a lot of what's considered the civil work on the site. So we deal with a lot of water, utility issues and things like that. So I'll give you an example. We are also we have people at our training school who are trained in stormwater capture with ARCSA. I'm sure some of you have heard of them already, but those are just some of the programs that we have training in that our members can provide to the contractors. But we also deal with water issues, not so different from what Josh is dealing with on the city and county level with regard to stormwater capture and large scale flooding, but on the utility level. We have training in that as well. In fact, a lot of what we do, not here locally just yet, but that is done at, I'm not sure if you've heard of Irvine Ranch Water District in California. They provide stormwater capture and reuse on a large scale, on a utility scale. And that, and I've spoken with the mayor in the past about that as well. Maybe Josh knows about it as well. But you know, these guys will go ahead and capture all of that storm water, replumb some of their streets with regard to fire hydrants, watering parks, and all of that, you know, and all of that kind of thing, and schoolyards and wherever we can use recaptured stormwater. So we do deal in a lot of those technologies. Other unions, they do so as well too. You know, we also do a lot of solar work as well. So that's why, you know, one of the reasons why I say we want to be included, so we know what's being considered, so we can get our local people here trained up and ready to roll once these technologies are, you know, going to be ready to be used here in Hawaii.
Thank you, Ryan. Both Ryan and Nathan, I'd just like to volunteer if you guys would ever like to have a presentation on climate change, both some of the global projections as well as what we know is changing here in Hawaii. I would love to do it. Just ask.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chip. I mean, that's so basically we're not on. So the training portion is kind of a new, you know, like training these guys and having them understand what role they're playing in sustainability and construction is kind of a new and evolving thing. So I don't think most of the training programs have that. And what's drawing us into this field though is, you know, one, the cost of affordable housing and these, like, you know, mandates, certain type of mandates that drive up the cost of affordable housing. That's one portion. And we usually come in and it's usually kind of like more of a fight with the environmentalists over like, okay, I know you guys feel this is necessary, but we feel it's costly and it adds to the bottom line and doesn't make projects pencil. That's one part of it. The other part of it, though, why we're getting drawn into climate change and sustainability is we're looking at every single one of the sewage treatment plants that are on the coast that are probably going to need to move to inland like a mile or at least half a mile, every single one of them, because of the climate change. We're looking at, I mean, there's several portions of highways that are already being inundated by seawater, rising sea levels. So we're looking at it again. So we're getting drawn into this as like, well, we got to make sure that we're protecting affordable housing, but also like the work potential, the upside potential, and all of the civil infrastructure things that Ryan is talking about. That's another component of this, which is really drawing us in. Like, wow, you know, like we really would like to see a whole bunch of the roads redone and moved in, and we obviously have to do that with fresh water as well as our sewage treatment plants and all of that. So there's kind of this dueling kind of this tug and this pull for right now, and I think what would probably help us to understand these issues a little bit better is kind of leaning on people like you guys to kind of like, you know, give us like kind of the buzzwords and kind of like, you know, because it's a whole new language when you guys are talking. It's like, okay, so what now? What was that? You know, we're still trying to find our way. So we would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Nathan, sadly, adaptation and mitigation of climate change are both growth industries.
Right.
And
Totally understand.
They're actually also, sadly, but beneficially, there are enormous new types of jobs and historical types of jobs that need to be applied to this. So
definitely. Well, I'll stop taking time. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathaniel. Thanks, Chip. I'm going to, for the sake of time, move down our list of folks who want to get their 2 cents in. Next on the list is David Arkawa. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chair. You know, we'd like to thank Bettina. She's a visionary. She's reasonable. She reminds me of Scott. I told her and Scott Glenn could solve the problems of the world. But we're here. We're willing to help. The tone of the presentations from the construction industry is based on the first few commissioners who talked about working together and working further on this. We believe that this document is important because policymakers are going to use this document to pass laws. So it's very important. we would make the comment that perhaps Mayor Blangiardi's administration, can, when you ask about how to move forward, we would say include Mayor Blangiardi's administration and the new DPP director, whoever's at OCCSR. If Josh is there, Josh, that's what we would recommend. We'd note that the slideshow, this report was really great, raised great issues. We loved a lot of the things in Bettina's slideshow, but the slideshow wasn't consistent with the document. We didn't see those recommendations and everything that was on that slideshow in the document. So that's something that we were kind of concerned with. And the document had some unfinished sections in it. So maybe fleshing that out would be good. But we agree with Bettina. I don't think we need more data. Everybody knows what the problems are, and we all want to address the same things, we think. And this report is important. As the bottom line, we would say, look at following Scott Glenn's process, the process he used for the EIS rules, on how to get the stakeholders together and work together on something that's useful. On the stakeholders list, we'd be willing to bring in more stakeholders. We saw the portion relating to equitable housing systems, but we would like, low-income housing people to get involved. There should be a cost-benefit analysis. And the last thing, field trips and training chip go both ways. So we'd like to bring you to these housing projects. We'd like to bring you to construction sites, roads, utilities, and not you, but you and any commissioners. So you see how the policy that climate change policy that's set by policymakers affects people on the ground, right? So we're really excited. I talked to Bettina. One of the most exciting things that Bettina and I talked about was taking developers and contractors and the construction industry out to see how green concrete is made. And so that's part of the training chip that you kind of talked about, but we would like to cross-train also members of the environmental community in how much their policies cost. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, David. I'm on board with that.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Thanks, David. And I know that last time we talked about the construction guidance paper that you brought up the issue of cost benefit analysis as well. And I'm still not quite convinced that a cost benefit analysis is appropriate for this type of guidance document, which is really meant to provide that higher level framework within which to create these conversations and talk about kind of the climate conscious solutions. I would think that a cost benefit analysis might be its own document and would be its own work stream, as opposed to being incorporated into something like this, which is a big enough topic as it is.
That's fair. That's fair. Thank you very much, Chair Keener. Part of the concern was that Bill 25 proposed mandates that would have made one housing unit increase in price by $24,000, right? So if you want to do that in a separate document, then that's okay. That's good, but it was to prevent things like that. So I agree with you. This document is great and big as it is, and we should take that separately. I agree, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And next on the list, let me scroll back up. There was someone, Brittany Key.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to be commenting mostly just as a member of the public, although I'm an AmeriCorps Vista right now over at the Office of Planning. I'm not sure if my comments will be entirely in place, given that we've already been talking about excessive data. But I guess I just wanted to bring up if public health considerations have been in with the idea of the high rises and having buildings going up instead of out. There was something I believe that Henry had brought up earlier that reminded me of that. Mainly thinking off the top of my head with like air pollution concerns and urban heat island effects being potentially exacerbated with higher buildings. And then of course, those are also being exacerbated with climate change. It's just a curiosity question if that's being factored in to this like sustainable envision and design for cities going forward.
Thanks, Brittany. Any responses from commissioners or comments on that one?
Oh, I guess it's bouncing my way. These are good comments, but it's a bit difficult to answer them. You know, one size doesn't fit all. And sometimes maybe one has to look at, you know, the lesser of two evils. If we have to build, is it better to build up and on a smaller footprint, or in respect to your heat island question, or does it justify sprawl? I don't think anything justifies sprawl. Does it mean potentially having a bit more the heat island effect? Well, possibly, but let's think about what could reduce that. Should we use green roofs? I mean, it's a perfect question you're asking, because it allows me to show how important the dialogue now is. How willing are we to offset the bad? And there are definitely opportunities. Does that answer your question? At least portion of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, more or less. I wasn't so much getting at we shouldn't build up or we shouldn't build out, but exactly what you said, where if we're going to build up and take that into consideration, what can we do? Like, are those impacts basically being considered so that they can try to be mitigated?
Yeah. No,
Thank you.
glad you spoke up. Thank you.
Thanks again, Brittany, and thank you, Bettina. So I don't see anyone left in the chat, I don't think. I don't see anyone raising their hands. And I think, Wynn, please correct me if I missed somebody in the chat, but I think we're caught up. What I did want to do is I wanted to specifically, so we've gotten a lot of feedback from people today who want to be involved in the process and who have strong opinions on how they can make this guidance better, more comprehensive, more informed, which I think is a fantastic outcome, and I'm really happy to see where it goes. But what I do want to get a better idea of before we move on is exactly what type of comments with the specific recommendations that Bettina talked about. You know, if there's very specific feedback, for example, on the types of modifications or input that different stakeholders would want to have. So I just personally, I'd like to get a better idea of, for instance, where you would make modifications to the recommendations or what you think is lacking. And I'm happy to put them up on the screen if, I'll just share my screen in a minute.
Could I comment on that? I mean, maybe I shouldn't, since it's my paper, but I am so encouraged by this dialogue here, and I feel that everybody sees what this paper is trying to accomplish. I would love to have a session where all of us, all the stakeholders, come together. It might be a big meeting, but it could be facilitated. And one discussion point could be, do we want to put more meat on these recommendations? I mean, right now they are very broad, and they're setting a direction that is very, I mean, it invites dialogue. There is, it's a benign document. What I'm hearing though is that there are a lot of people that are thinking along the same lines. but maybe the opportunity hasn't quite come up for them to speak up and say, hey, this is what we are thinking, what we could do. So quite frankly, if we're holding this up for another round, maybe not much more than that, but till after one of those stakeholders meetings took place and everybody has had their paw print on it, then maybe it is embraced more and there is more ownership of it. And we have taken an additional step forward.
Thanks, Bettina. Did anyone who gave testimony earlier and feedback have a comment specifically on the recommendations that could give me a better idea of the types of specific feedback that we'd be looking at it in future iterations of this?
Henry Curtis was really specific with regard to 4A and the height limitation. I think we should reconsider that.
Actually, I was addressing, it says, allow developers teams to develop innovative solutions to climate change, such as raising ground floor elevations. That's to mitigate climate change. It's not to combat climate change.
Ooh, that's why I shouldn't be writing papers. You're absolutely right.
Thanks, Henry. Are there any other specific kinds of comments? Sorry, I didn't remember that one off the top of my head, Henry, that it was very specific, the feedback you gave. Thank you.
Kina, this is Dave Arcal. Can I talk?
Mm-hmm. Sure,
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll just try to be quick. On page 2, the need for equitable housing systems. We should be talking to the affordable, page 2 of this report at the bottom.
So specifically, David, I'm asking for what's on the screen right now with the guidance, the recommendations and consideration.
Well,
and so specific feedback on these.
I didn't, was that in the report? Do we have that? Was that posted on the?
Yeah, the recommendations are at the end of the document in this one. So we would pull it up to the front in the final drafts, but
the recommendations that are on the website show a blank. It says still in progress, and there's only 1, 2, and 3. If you check the website, the document that we're looking at, all of us who testify, has only 1, 2, and 3. I think, I don't know. Maybe I pulled it off the other day. Maybe I pulled it off on Monday, but I don't see a document that looks like this or I don't see all of these on the document that's on the website. I may be mistaken, but sorry about that. So, okay, okay, I'm sorry, but let me check on the website because I don't see, well, I copied it the other day, so I'm sorry.
David, this is Henry Curtis. We agree with you.
This is like the second or third time that Henry Curtis and I agreed. So I love it. I just love. See, Bettina, what you started?
It is. I will mark that day in the calendar. It's awesome.
It's a love fest.
Thanks, Henry and David. And Bettina, I guess this was an updated version with the recommendation?
Actually, the November 6th version should have been posted, and it had all of this in.
Okay,
but well, it has been. There were some. I took some targets, some specific numbers out because I felt that they would be unrealistic, and we should have the conversation about what the appropriate targets for us here in Hawaii, given our isolation, is. So that was in the prior version, but it sounds as if
yeah. All right. So
and Curtis have the one from like 2 months ago.
Okay. So why don't we, given all of this and the input that we've gotten today, why don't we agree that we need to take this paper back for additional revision and continued input from the community and development based on the conversations that have been started today. And we can use that as a way forward to both get feedback and improve the recommendations. And I don't think that needs to be voted on. I see Chip is in thumbs up agreement. Does that sound good to McKenna and Rosie? Thumbs up, virtual and real life. All right. And Bettina, we will be in touch with you to take this burden off of you and really help set this up in some similar ways that we did, maybe with like the equity guidance document, and figure out a way to get good feedback in a virtual way during these conditions. Sound good? Okay. And if there aren't additional comments from people who haven't already commented on this agenda item, which I don't see, then why don't we go on to item 7 on the agenda, public input for matters not on the agenda. Is there additional public input for matters not on this agenda?
This is
David?
okay. I just want to give you a heads up. I'm not sure if this is happening or not, but tomorrow there's going to be Bill 65 regarding to OCCSR, the Office of Climate Change. There's going to be a Bill 65, and we support many of the provisions in Bill 65. But we are asking for, and there might be a revision to Bill 65 to add a stakeholder advisory task force. So it would be made up of stakeholders, of community members, that are facing sea level rise, of scientists, of 2 people from your commission, and also architects, engineers, and planners, and also business and people like that, construction, etc. And the second thing that the floor draft might include is a cost benefit analysis, to require OCCSR to do a cost benefit analysis. And sadly, in talking with OCCSR and the city administration, they're not supportive of either of those. They're not supportive of a stakeholder advisory task force, not supportive of a cost benefit analysis. And the third thing, so maybe that led to the third thing, but the third thing is a audit. Every 4 years, an audit of OCCSR. And a lot of this was based on the Biki Bike audit. So we'd like all the city departments to kind of comply or think about the things that were in the Biki Bike audit. So we support OCCSR, we support the city's efforts, but we thought that a stakeholder group would be good, and a cost benefit analysis and an audit. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Arakawa. Are there other inputs from the public for matters not on the agenda? You can go ahead and put it in the chat or unmute yourself or throw up a reaction hand. I don't see anybody. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the tentative next meeting date, which I believe is January 25th. When? Fill me in. We just decided that, didn't we?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yes, it'll be January 25th.
January 25th. And is there a time yet?
The time is 1 o'clock.
All right, so January 25th at 1 o'clock is our next meeting. And I know that we're trying to get some updates. So we'll have some good meaty updates on the agenda when that is released. Number 9 on the agenda is announcements. Are there any additional announcements from the commission? Rosie.
I just wanted to let everybody know that the Pacific Island Climate Adaptation Science Center had funded a community-driven assessment of fish ponds for climate change. And that report was just released. Full disclosure, I was the PI on that report, and we consulted with fish pond practitioners across the island to assess what they perceive as their really relevant needs. So that report, I believe, will be available. We just submitted it. It should be publicly available by January, but just wanted to give people the heads up. It's pretty comprehensive and is very community driven.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. Thanks, Rosie. Are there other announcements from the commission? Are there any announcements from the public? Not seeing anything. And in that case, if there are no additional objections or announcements, I am going to propose that we call the meeting or adjourn the meeting. One day I'll get all of the words right.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Have a happy holiday season and we'll see you next year.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for
Happy
attending,
holidays.
everybody.
Thanks to the OCCSR staff for such a wonderful year of hard work.
Mahalo,
Yes.
commissioners.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
everybody. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
being at this meeting. Bye.